I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Bateman?
Here.
Mr. Goodyear?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Ori?
Here.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Here.
Mr. Ping?
Here.
Welcome, everyone. With us tonight, we have our Director of Finance, Mark Medler, Assistant City Manager, Chris Weinich, Clerk of Council, Misty Clark, Dave Kennedy, City Manager, City Solicitor, Joe Braun, and our Police Chief, Michael Gabrielson. Also, former council members Todd Osborne, Kent Blair, and Pat Mays. So, welcome, everyone. First up is Open Forum, Kent Blair.
My name is Kent Blair. I live at 1849 Pheasant Hills Drive. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wish to speak in support of the pay raise ordinance for Council, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Mayor. As a veteran councilman, like the Marines, there are no ex-councilmen. There are only former councilmen. I have a very good idea of what a council person's job entails. Let me, for the record, elaborate a bit. The Friday before every council meeting, the agenda and accompanying packet are posted on the city website. In each packet is the agenda and the accompanying documents and items of business for the next meeting, whatever fresh hell the city manager can invent from the fevered brains of the city staff. I was always blessed when I served on council due to my advanced age and rapidly diminishing mental capacity that the clerk of council always printed off the agenda for me to read. In fact, she'll be delighted to know that I have returned almost all of the
Thank you.
for all of those agendas, and which should significantly enhance the city's budgetary situation. Anyway, each councilman gets this packet and goes through it and spends literally hours reading topics that include everything from the latest zoning brouhaha to the chemical makeup and price of road salt. Each item has importance. Each item requires due diligence and due consideration. Every item on those agendas affects the lives of 12,000 people, and there is weight to that consideration. So after a study period, every council person finds that questions may be raised, and some are asked in advance, which is always helpful. Some are asked during the meeting, and some get asked after the meeting. The meeting itself consists of varying numbers of hours where all the council people sit up there and weigh in on the items on the agenda. Many times in forums such as this one, they are praised, castigated, accused of various nefarious items, and at all times the weight of those 12,000 people sits on their shoulders. The raise at issue is $400 a year from what it is from the $5,700 it is now for councilmen. And that $400 raise works out to around $250 a meeting. That's a 6.5% bump from what is currently offered, and assuming about $10 hours per meeting, that's a little over $25 an hour. I can assure you that virtually everybody on that dais works for more than $25 an hour currently. no one who sits on on council is doing it for the money. There's way too much passion, trust, collaboration, service, love, and grief to make it worth the money. As with almost everything else that this council does regarding city finances, and knowing the current council very well, what we pay council is a bargain. And I know there will be noise from various segments of the population who want to criticize the fact that council is making anything for the job that they do. I wanted to make sure that at least one voice is heard in support of everything you do every day, and the pay raise that is being proposed tonight in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Pat Mays.
Hi, my name is Pat Mays, 1126 Cottonwood Drive. I know you'll find this hard to believe, but I am going to be brief, hopefully less than the 5 minutes. I have two things that I'd just like to point out to council. Number one, committees work really hard for the cities, and they don't get paid on committees. Oh, wait, you get $1 at the end of the year and a lovely parting gift. Thank you, Misty. But the other night, I brought my granddaughters down here to meet family, and we were going to go to the works. And when we got here, we had to wait a little bit, so we're walking around, and somebody had vandalized the topiaries on the side of City Hall. And it's not the first time it's happened, or the second, or the third. Probably more often. My little girls were upset, and they put it all back together except for the dirt. I understand that there is security in the building, but I think there needs to be cameras on the outside of the building so that that kind of vandalism doesn't happen. Like I said, committees work hard for it, cities pay for it. I think you need cameras on the outside of your buildings facing the parking lot and so forth. That's number one. Number two, I live on Cottonwood. I had the joy of the gas leak down there, and the fire department, the police department, everybody did a fantastic job, except I couldn't get through. But other than that, it was good. They did well. But today, a car hit the office building right in front of my place, and I felt really bad for the little lady. New car. She thought it was in reverse. It was in drive. It took out the front entrance of the building. No injuries. But I got to watch the Loveland Sims Fire Department and Police Department work quickly, efficiently, and like a well-oiled machine. It was pretty interesting to watch. So I just wanted to give them a attaboy for a good job. Two of the firemen reminded me that I had known them since they were 16. Thank you very much. Now they're at like 35 years or something on the fire department. But they did an excellent job. It was pretty impressive. Hauling the car out of the front end of the building, trying to keep this old lady calm who wouldn't go to the hospital or get checked out. But they did a great job. And I just think we don't always say thank you to them. I reminded them that when I had health issues, fell down the steps, broke my hip, they were fantastic. I was in a very precarious situation for them to move me around. They did a great job. Of course, I was drugged up, but they still did a fantastic job. And that's it. And look at that, 2 minutes 17. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Stanton.
Dave Stanton, 208 Century Hill Drive, Loveland. I'm here this evening. There was an invitation to talk about the new amphitheater and wanted to give some inputs around that. Really, the proposed redesigned amphitheater will be a nice addition to Nesbitt Park. As the planning moves forward, several concerns must be addressed and answers must be provided as elected officials to the Loveland citizens. Sound pollution is a major concern for the North Loveland area. Over the past few summers, we've experienced many violations of Noise Ordinance 1175.03 in Hermitage Point, Century Hill, Blossom Hill, and Brandywine. In meeting with Chief Gaberson and working with downtown business owners, I believe we resolved the sound violations and hopefully compliance will continue. Thank you, Chief, for your help in working that out. Statements from your policy and strategic guidance planning session enforce around the new amphitheater, enforce the noise ordinance and keep the ordinance in mind as sound equipment is purchased for Nesbitt Park. Ensure the sound is directed away from residential areas as the amphitheater is designed. Enforcement of the noise ordinances is a top priority. Several suggestions on how to accomplish this goal. Any permit and/or contract to perform at the amphitheater should include the responsibility to the performers that they are aware of the sound ordinance and be held responsible and monitor for delivering the ordinance dB levels, and penalties for violating the sound ordinance dB levels. Loveland law enforcement can install a free app on your iPhone. It's called Decibel X, and sound engineers in the concert venues use this all the time to monitor sound levels. This is a free app. Police officers can use it and be able to measure if there's a violation or not against the ordinance. Provide a clear process for filing a noise complaint, officer response, and if in violation, the procedure to prosecute. With the Nesbitt Park Amphitheater becoming a concert venue under Ordinance 509.08C, Nesbitt Park should be removed from the exempted noise regulations list and should be held accountable to the 1175.01 ordinance for maximum permitted sound levels. Purchase of sound equipment. As a former touring musician, it would not be a good decision to purchase sound equipment for the amphitheater. I've played in small venues and very large venues, and we never used a provided sound system as it does not meet the needs of what you want to accomplish as musicians. As a music venue, performing artists will not use a provided sound system for the following reasons. A sound system is far more than just speakers and amplifiers. The provided sound system does not meet the requirements of the performers, from sound mixing board, type of microphones, stage monitors, audio cabling, and types of speakers, among other items as example. A provided sound system would be viewed as a risk. Will it function properly? Will it produce the sound the performers want to deliver? Are specific microphones provided for vocals, percussion, guitars? How many stage monitors are there? Is there an RF transmitter for RF wireless earbuds? And can I use my soundboard? These are all risks that a performer would look at. Sound direction. Directing the sound away from residential areas in the amphitheater is designed will not solve any sound issues. Sound is not directional and generally travels up as the sound hits solid and other surfaces. The average elevation of the North Loveland neighborhoods are 704 feet above the proposed Nesbitt Park Amphitheater. Nesbitt Park Amphitheater sits at 540 feet, and that's 164 feet above on average where we sit in North Loveland. I strongly suggest the city hire a sound acoustic engineer to consult on the design of the amphitheater, positioning of the amphitheater, and use of sound-absorbing materials in Nesbitt Park to help mitigate the possible noise pollution from the music venue. In closing, progress and changes are inevitable in any small community. However, it is the responsibility of you as elected officials to listen to the citizens, manage these changes, and uphold the law so that we are not negatively impacted as Loveland residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanton. Deidre Hazelbaker.
Thank you, Deidre Hazelbaker, 101 Ash Street. Good evening, and thank you, council and city staff. I love the thoughtful approach of putting this out on Facebook to invite people to speak tonight on Nesbitt Park, and I really appreciate the planning around the budgeting and making sure grants were acquired. I personally have always loved Nesbitt Park. We go down there. I like that it's a little hidden gem to get to the path down to the river. We collect fossils. Too many pictures to speak of. It'd be embarrassing on my phone if I brought them out, how many pictures we have of the Little Miami and the fossils. But obviously it's a treasure that many in Loveland care about, just based on even some of the comments within the post and then all the people that share it. I do love some of the proposed ideas around the adult swings and some of the accessibility. And in the packet, there was a proposed design rendering for the replacing the existing amphitheater. Personally, I love the existing amphitheater. I think it's the right size. I think there, similar sentiment around sound, making sure that the residents aren't impacted with the sound. But it seems like replacing it may make sense. So I would just encourage good stewardship on the existing stone and lumber, and making sure the aesthetic in the packet, the rendering is pretty modern, clean lines on the rendering. So I'd love conversation around the historic character, the new not pavilion. What am I trying to think of? The gazebo. Thanks. I don't know why I looked at you, Missy, but I think because we were doing the little volunteer thing there was our meeting spot. But the gazebo, I think just matching that aesthetic would make a lot of sense. And then obviously pulling in some of the modern amenities. I also think with some of the increased traffic or size that you're trying to attain, just making sure the sustainability and long-term kind of planning is impacted. So just working maybe with Loveland, the Little Miami Conservancy or Love Our Land to kind of see what the impact to the river would be, and possibly, especially when it was talked about taking out some of the invasive plants, I think that's a smart idea, but what's that impact on maybe some of the existing shade and or just nature kind of that's within there. But I think that you're making thoughtful plans around native plants. I do also love that you put pervious pavers in some of that dining area. The new plan really does show a lot of concrete. So I would just encourage the pervious pavers to make sure that we have stormwater control and making sure that even aesthetically, those pervious pavers can have a really nice look and feel. I did have a section on sound, but I think Dave addressed it better than I would because I did not travel with a musician, so band. But I do think just being thoughtful to the sound and bringing a sound engineer would be smart. So with that, just my questions really just for council to consider would be the design of the amphitheater to adopt and reflect the historical nature of that area while maybe incorporating some of the modern functionality. Sustainable materials and or items like the pervious pavers to reduce the environmental impact. And then long-term maintenance as well. If we are going to have the increase, just making sure the trash collection, the restroom facilities really gets brought up a lot, even for existing traffic. And the general upkeep are considered with this increased size and usage. And then just having experts like Little Miami Conservancy, Love Our Land, our sound engineer, not sure what's been consulted already, but just again, always reaching out to those experts. So it's a special place, obviously, for all of you sitting up there. We all love Nisbet Park. I think it's already a great park and holds a special place in our community. So just making sure these thoughtful updates are made. Thanks.
Thank you. Sharon Scovanner.
Sharon Scovanner, 155 Overlook Drive. Thank you for the invitation to comment on the proposed Nisbet Park Amphitheater. The city describes this project as a regional outdoor musical venue that will increase tourism and will be able to host a wide variety of expanded events, including concerts, festivals, school productions, and educational programs benefiting our community partners in the downtown business district. If I were in your position as staff or council, I would ask myself a series of questions about the proposal. Number one, is this a need or a want? Obviously, no city needs an amphitheater, especially when one already exists. Number two, are the citizens asking for this project? I took a look at public input taken during the downtown master plan, and there was no mention in the public comments that the current amphitheater needed to be replaced. Number three, does an outdoor music venue fit with the unique charm and historic character of downtown Loveland, assets that everyone agrees need to be protected? Number four, is this the right location for an amphitheater? Downtown Loveland is the most congested area of the city. Traffic congestion continues to plague motorists traveling through the area. Staff describes the amphitheater as a way to increase tourism, which will in turn add even more traffic. Couple this with increased housing density in and around downtown, the traffic problems continue to be exacerbated. Additionally, the small footprint of Nisbet Park and its close proximity to residential areas in all directions creates noise pollution for residents. The city's noise ordinance states that, and I quote, "No person shall generate or permit to be generated unreasonable loud noise or loud sound that is likely to cause inconvenience or annoyance to persons of ordinary sensibilities by means of a radio, phonograph, television, tape player, loudspeaker, CD player, digital tape, or disc, or any other sound amplifying devices, or by any horn, drum, piano, or musical or percussion instrument." Unfortunately, there is a provision in the code that says that normal use of Nisbet Park is exempt. It is not clear if the use of amplified sound or music in the park is considered normal use. If this project is to go forward, council must clarify that any amplified sound, no matter the event or who is sponsoring it, shall be required to conform to the decibel levels and time constraints prescribed in the ordinance. Decibel levels should not be allowed to be higher than the ordinance prescribes beyond the property line of Nisbet Park. The need for enforcing the sound ordinance was brought up during the City Council planning session in February. We agree. There needs to be an enforcement mechanism in place and consequences for those who violate the ordinance. The desires of tourists, visitors, and businesses should not supersede the right of citizens to enjoy tranquility on their own property. In speaking with an acoustical engineer, outdoor music venues are particularly difficult for sound pollution mitigation. Plans provided by the city did not indicate the use of sound dampening panels or other types of mitigation. The removal of green space, earth berms, and trees, and replaced by hard surfaces in downtown only exacerbate the problem. Given these obstacles, is this project right for Nisbet Park? The city should set an example by being a good neighbor so as to not be an irritant to the residents living nearby. Rules for thee, but not for me, is bad public policy that oftentimes leads to a breakdown of trust and respect within the community. And lastly, number 5, is funding this project a good use of taxpayer money? Well, much of the funding will come from outside the general fund. $201,000 is coming from the lease of a water tower. If not for this project, this money could be used for more pressing city needs, such as PFAS remediation, replacing antiquated water mains, or closing the gap in the city's 2024 budget due to revenues not meeting expectations. In closing, I would urge council to consider the needs and wants of the citizens you are elected to represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are the review and approval of minutes from the October 22nd, 2024 meeting. Are there any changes, additions to those minutes?
Make a motion to approve the October 22nd meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So, following the public input, the for council is the resolution which both commits the local match and authorizes the submission of the grant for Land and Water Conservation Fund. Been working on this application for about a month, a little over a month. We'll say that we have received letters of support from a wide variety, downtown business owners, Little Miami River Conservancy, the Ohio River Foundation, Loveland City School District, and multiple businesses. This, as Sharon mentioned, what we were trying to do with this application was find a way to fund a program that fund this project without drawn down from the general fund. I wanted to point out that actually the city of Loveland began a pretty significant planning effort in 2019 and completed it in 2022 and did 4 separate plans, comprehensive master plan, the streetscape plan, the downtown plan, and Nisbet Park master plan. We were talking at the Parks and Rec meeting the other day that when the city was doing the Nisbet Park master plan, we actually were in the middle of COVID. And between the outdoor events that were held, the public meeting at the Little Miami Conservancy's offices, but if I recall, we were discussing that the students from the high school actually put together a QR code so residents could do the online survey. So the application, one of the biggest things I think the city is doing, and Chris and I were talking about it with the CIP presentation that we were going to make at the second meeting in November, is to do plans is pretty simple. You hire a consultant, you have a couple meetings, and you've got a plan. And in many communities, these plans sit up on the shelves. The city could have just done a master plan. We actually identified 3 items that would have gotten somewhat lost or brushed over in a master plan. That would be the downtown, Nisbet, and the streetscape plan. It did separate plans for those. But I would say that this city council, through their goals, has obviously directed the city to implement the plans and not let them sit on the shelves. And I think you'll see that in the CIP. Obviously, we can discuss that later. So, this proposal, the total cost for the amphitheater is about $1.4 million. That includes all the engineering and designs and construction administration fees. We were awarded $250,000 for this project through the state of Ohio's one-time strategic community program. As was mentioned, we've secured a letter of intent with Verizon for $201,000, and we are trying to identify the additional roughly $54,000. The application, which is due on the 15th, will be submitted this week. If council approves this resolution, as standard, the legislation includes the right that I can go ahead and execute all forms and agreements if funded.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? No comments or questions. All right, I'm going to read the resolution.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to submit and execute an Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Water and Conservation Fund application for the Nisbet Park Amphitheater.
All right, thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Goodyear,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes. Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Resolution 83 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So the city submitted a grant application back actually in the spring to do a sidewalk connection on Osage, which would connect West Loveland to Tuscarora. This goes in council's goals of connectivity amongst our neighborhoods. This particular project has an added bonus, as this Osage is a bit of a funnel for the high school students who are heading down onto Rich Road. So this particular project, if you actually go up there, you can see where it looks like they made the turn on Tuscarora and they made the turn on West Loveland, and they never connected it. It's a pretty simple project because it's sidewalk only. The curbs and gutters were already put in place. You can just sort of see the line where the sidewalks were never entered. So the city received grant funding through the Hamilton County Community Development Block Grant Program, which will cover almost all of the project cost. When you reach the corner at West Loveland and Osage, it gets a little snug in terms of where the right of way is. To create the handicap access at each corner, the existing handicap ramps have to be removed with new ones put in that have truncated domes. The handicap ramp on Osage and West Loveland would not fit within the existing right-of-way. So the current property owners at 1205 West Loveland, Mr. George and Michael Pirtle, have reached out to them, and we've prepared an easement and presented it to them for review. This easement has no financial connections to it. It simply would give us the proper right of way to install the sidewalk as planned with the proper handicap access. Mr. Braun prepared the easement. It's been presented to the property owners. We anticipate them being willing to execute it. There is one tree that has to be removed, and we would remove that in the preferred tree removal period, which is right now, between now and the end of March. So that was all I had on that.
All right. Any comments or questions? All
Just-
right. Yes, Vice Mayor.
No fiscal impact. It's in your memo, and that's the case.
No, there's no fiscal. We don't typically pay for easements. The city doesn't.
All right. Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an easement agreement with George M. and Clinton Michael Kirtle for the installation of sidewalks.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Resolution 84 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Kennedy.
So tonight, I brought fourth resolution that would designate 497 North 2nd Street as the locally historic structure. As you know, that this would be our fifth nomination for a historic designation, and quite frankly, not to be biased, but probably one of the finest ones we have had to this point. This structure, which has been reviewed by the HPPC Commission, both in an open meeting and then at a public hearing, it represents not only an extremely structure with extremely historic overtones because of the tenant who lived there, General Thomas Tinsley Heath, but it also is probably one of the finest representations of restoration that we've ever seen in the city. And we're really fortunate that the property owner, Mr. Houck, submitted this application. And I can't say enough of how fortunate we are. I tried to provide as much information in the package as possible. And the way the process works is City Council can or cannot have a public hearing. Typically, they don't. The Historic Preservation sort of your historic arm. They had their public hearing. There were positive input at that from adjacent property neighbors, and the nomination from the HPPC was unanimous, to say the least, for this home. I tried to provide some information for you. We then, once the resolution is passed, the city will work with to get the plaque made, and then we will present that to the property owner. And that's really all I had. Mr. Houck is here tonight, but like I said, most of the information I've provided to you.
Thank you. Anybody have any comments or questions? Mr. Bateman?
I just want to thank Mr. Houck for taking this this tool that the city has for historic preservation and applying it to his home, and really appreciative of that. All of the hard work that has gone into restoration on this home, and now getting it this local designation, I think is an honor for the city to have that. And so again, just want to thank you personally for doing that. To Dave's point, this is a real feather in the cap of the historic preservation initiatives that we've done in this city, and we really owe it all to the homeowner for that. We didn't do anything other than have a system in place for this level of preservation and designation and protection. So just a big thank you from me to Mr. Houck.
Any other comments? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, kudos to Mr. Houck for keeping this property magnificent. It truly is something to behold. And I assume the entire property is, because I noticed is there a garage that's separate from the house?
I'm sorry, I can just barely hear you.
Yeah, there's page 38 of the packet. It appears to be depicting a garage.
Carriage house.
Carriage house?
Carriage house.
Garage is separate from the house.
Okay, and I assume that'll be part of
Yes,
the
it's the entire property.
So I want to know. Thank you.
Any further comment? I would just echo what they said, Mr. Houck. We only see this house when the fall, all the leaves are down, is the only time we get to see it. So it's nice to see all the pictures. You've done a wonderful job with it. Thank you. All right, want to go ahead and read the resolution?
Resolution designating the Miami on the home of General Thomas Tensley Heath as a local historically listed property.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Resolution 85 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Weinich.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you is finally getting to the finish line of the Cherokee and West Main water main improvements, as well as some drainage improvements that are being done out there. As you are aware, we went through two sets of funding processes, one through Congressman Landsman's office and one through OPWC. Obviously, we're successful on both. One thing that came up with the federal funding, there was additional environmental hurdles we had to get through. We got through those. The last two pieces, the first piece is this storm sewer easement. We've been working with Westover Village Apartments, otherwise known on here as LRC Westover Forest LP. We're working with them to get a storm sewer easement on the outskirts of their property. We're upsizing a storm sewer as part of this project from a 12-inch to an 18-inch. So got through that process. This will not be any financial impact. As Mr. Kennedy spoke before, this is an easement that has no cost associated with it. This is simply wrapping this up. Once this is done, we'll be able to move forward with construction, and you'll hear in the next memo of the bids that were opened on that. But it's pretty simple, no impact to us. And the owners have actually already signed. Mr. Braun and his office reviewed it, and so this will be the last step in that.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an easement with LRC Westover Forest LP for the installation of storm sewer.
Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Resolution 86 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Weinich.
As you know, once again, Cherokee Water Main project. We budgeted $1.9 million for this project. It was, once again, water main, storm sewer improvements, roadway improvements. This is the first piece that a portion of the water repair replacement fund would be used for. We did open bids on October 29th. We had 8 bids, really good turnout from a lot of good contractors. The bids range from a little under 1.5 million to 2.2 million. The engineers, as we talked about, the budgeted was 1.9. We had an engineer's estimate once we really nailed down the project of 1.755. So it came in within the engineer's estimate. And our low bid was Majors Enterprises. They actually, if you recall, they actually did the Loveland Miamiville Phase 2 sidewalk project, and they did a really good job on that. They're based out of Monroe. They're really getting their feet. They've probably been in the business, hardcore in the business, for about 5 to 6 years, but they did a fantastic job on that last project. So we're really excited with council's blessing to enter into contract with them. With that said, just a little bit of a breakdown of how it's coming under budget. For our grants, that doesn't really help us out necessarily. It's basically money that we're not going to be taking through the grants, specifically through the OPWC. It's about $330,000 less on that. And then we originally allocated $124,551 from the WMR fund. We'll be significantly under that by about $85,000 of what we originally budgeted. So this is a positive going into next year to be able to reallocate some of these WMR funds to more projects as we continue to identify them. So with that said, we would recommend entering into an agreement with Majors Enterprises.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, we'll read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Majors Enterprises, Inc. for the construction of the Cherokee and Main Water Main project.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Goodyear,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Resolution 87 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Warnich.
Another project we're all excited for it to finally get rolling on is the bike trail signalization project out here in West Loveland. As you know, the project was going fairly well, and I think we were, looking to see sometime in summer. We were hoping to have some construction, probably at the 11th hour, 10th hour. We did realize, hey, you know what? The railroad really needs to be involved in this to make sure we get all these signals working together properly. So ODOT, Ohio Rail, ORDC, we all got together with our consultant and made sure these plans were tight and what they needed to be so that everything talks together. So with that said, we're finally at the finish line. ODOT, this is kind of a formality. ODOT requires a final piece of legislation from the board, basically committing the funds that we've agreed to. And what the construction was identified as $281,898, and anything above that, the city was going to be on the hook for. So as it sits today, before it goes out to bid, our share will be $35,836. So what this is, and I put in the reference memo from everything we talked about as far as the bike trail signalization, what's going in there. Nothing has changed in the plans, simply making sure everything works in unison together. So this, once again, is pretty much a formality that just allows us at the staff level to go ahead and cut that check ahead of time, get it to ODOT, and ODOT's already put this out to bid, so this is on the street for bids. They're going to open them in mid-December, so we hope to see some movement in the first quarter of next year. I did hear recently that some of the signalization, some of the poles that they have to order up for the signals, those are a little bit of a longer lead time. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll see some movement by March, April, but it may linger until June. But we're gonna push as hard as we can once we know who the contractor is. So simply, this is just giving the approval for us to enter into the contract with ODOT, and they run this project from start to finish, and then we'll obviously oversee it.
All right. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Mr. Ori?
I recall us having several conversations, maybe at the planning meeting and in some council meetings also, but we talked about enforcement on this, on the lighting. And Chief, I know we've talked about it before, how we're going to do that. And I guess to kind of a soft warning first. But I think it's something that we ought to plan for. We got several months to plan for this. But starting putting some information out to the residents that this is coming, it will be enforced, and this is the reason why we're doing that. So.
I agree. If I can just comment on that a little bit, Mr. Ori, I think I actually talked to our traffic engineer with TC, Ed Williams, and there are I don't know what you would call it, like YouTube instructional videos sort of thing of what all this what it means, what it looks like. So I think we'll work with our marketing communication coordinator, Krista Rose, and as we get closer, we'll go ahead and get that information out to the public.
Good idea.
All right. Anyone else?
Just to follow on that, I think one of the things we have our channels to get it out to folks in Loveland, but because this is a bike trail that's going to draw regional tourists, during this time, I would say if there's a way we can get it out even broader, just to a recreational audience or a audience. I think, to Mr. Ori's point, I think if we can get people to know that this is coming, it might be a little than having people try to figure it out on their own without watching the YouTube videos for
right. And we have and Mr. Kennedy has a lot of more context than I do in the biking community too, throughout the many projects you all have done down here, and we'll make sure we reach out to them and get that information disseminated.
Excellent.
Mr. Hart?
to that point, I would, Mr. Kennedy's contacts in the biking community, I'm assuming that he has the full get up. My actual question was this: having spent a lot of time in classrooms and seeing what it's like to get the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak, I would implore the city staff to lean on people as much as we possibly can, and I know that you do, to get this out before we really hit the bulk of bike season in the spring. Because once we norm a behavior heading into the spring, it is going to be an extremely difficult situation to enforce, and putting added pressure on our law enforcement to try to figure out how we get people to react the right way once they've already started another season with those expectations. So,
Thank you. Any other comments? Vice Mayor?
Just, the imperative in my mind is safety. In that, I'm so glad we're doing this, because it seems to be affording a lot of safety, higher so in the future, because I always worried about that intersection there, and I know you did too. Will you have the opportunity or the ability to control it, like in times of downtown activities and a lot of people downtown? Are you going to be able to control the lights even further down the street, as well as this crosswalk, or is that something that's not built into the technology?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a better question for
I can
interoperability and what we would have.
Yeah, so we work hand in hand. Ed Williams with TEC, we'll work hand in hand with him for those certain events and certain times. It's all pretty much computerized in a sense where you can go in, it's a program, and you can go ahead and adjust those timings based on, well, number one, it's going to be a learning process of what timings make sense and whatnot. So there's going to be a recommended to start with, and then I think some of those will have to be adjusted. But I think that's a very good point. During certain events and certain times, they are going to all talk to each other. So this kind of puts everything together so that we will have a lot of flexibility in that. So we will certainly monitor that.
Thank you. Mr. Rory?
Yeah, just to touch on, Ted mentioned safety, but also we're doing this for traffic flow control. And I think that's going to be a big part of the education part of it, is we need to teach everybody that that causes a problem if we don't follow the signals.
Right. All right. Yes, Mr. Ping.
Just a question regarding the signalization. Refresh my memory, is this just for the bike trail, or is this including Railroad Avenue as well?
Not Railroad Avenue, West Loveland.
I'm saying the wrong name.
No, you're not.
saying the right.
Okay. Yeah. So the interaction of those two.
Oh,
the not pulling out.
Yes. Those all will interact together. That's correct.
So there will be signalization that will take care of Railroad trying to intersect with West Loveland at the same time the bike trail that's 10 feet away is trying to work with it.
Correct. Yes.
And just as an ancillary comment, we've all seen these kind of things, but I think the biggest benefit we're going to get from this is in the training of everybody that goes through downtown. Because tonight, when I was coming up to turn onto Railroad, the car in front of me stopped at the bike trail and diligently looked both directions to make sure there was nobody coming, and then went across. And we've all seen that, and I think that's part of what we're characterizing as the enforcement aspect. And certainly, I think signalization will make a big difference to that. So hopefully we're going to see people figure it out without a lot of effort. I think personally, I think the enforcement side of it is more important than the education side, only because I don't see people misunderstanding a red and green light. I see them being more likely to just do the same thing I see them do at red and green lights at other intersections. I'm on a bike, I pull up, I see nobody close, so I'll just go through the red light. And that will, I think, cause more problems than anything, because then people will see that and begin doing the same kinds of behaviors. So I would certainly be a fan of some early soft enforcement there of, on busy times on a weekend, having an officer that's just there to kind of help remind people that this is not a make-believe intersection. This is a legitimate intersection with signalization.
Mr. Goodyear.
I would just say that with what I think everybody's talked about with the traffic, I'm very excited we're getting to the point where this is actually going to come to fruition, because to me, living in Loveland, driving through downtown very frequently, the biggest issue is the uncertainty people have of what they're supposed to do when they arrive at that intersection. The bicyclists oftentimes kind of go without really hesitating, which then makes drivers always concerned about the safety of the bicyclist, so they're always stopping. And as Kip just said, Mr. Ping just said, people will stop, and they're not doing anything bad, they're just trying to be responsible. But every car stops at that intersection. So removing that uncertainty, I think, is going to be a major benefit to the traffic flow downtown. And I certainly appreciate all the work staff has done to get this to this point. And I would echo what Mr. Hart said, and I know you don't control all this necessarily, but getting it done as quickly as possible going into next year, I think would be very, very beneficial. And also, the other comment I would like to just emphasize as well is the notion that enforcing this in the beginning as much as possible. And I'm certainly not trying to tell you what to do your job, Chief, but enforcing this as much as you can initially, I think, is be very important for bicyclists more than anything to understand that this is an actual thing you need to do to stop for cars. And I think that will help tremendously with flow of traffic. But I'm excited for this. I've been kind of waiting to see when this is going to go forward. I'm happy we're doing this.
Any further comment?
I just think it's important. Chris and I were talking that there is more elements to this, because not only will there be this, but also you're seeing more and more traffic coming into town for the parking lot. And with Harrison being widened, and we will soon be installing a left turn arrow onto Carl Brown coming over the bridge, very similar to what we did at 5 Points, which is that quick blast to get people who can turn left onto Carl Brown, which is, we've said this before, if there was one quick fix to traffic, it would have been done. It's all of these little increments. And we think that the fact that now not all roads lead to Paxton's, meaning you can get into downtown from different avenues, in conjunction with this project, there's a larger distribution of traffic. So that turn arrows should be going up, hopefully before the end of the year or early in next year. And that'll just be that brief 1, 2, 3, and then it'll just blink yellow. So if you're sitting in front of Bishop's Quarter leaving town, it'll only be the count of a few seconds while people are turning left, and then you'll have that red. So that in conjunction with everything else, and this project is all part of that package. So,
Mr. Bateman. Speaking of increments, I just wanted to also mention my appreciation for the funding. How this is coming in from the downtown TIF, and so you're taking revenue generated from downtown and putting it back into downtown. So again, just a nice, sound financial decision to help us make this pretty important traffic improvement and safety improvement and downtown cultural improvement for the city. So just wanted to mention that.
And I think this project started, easily 4, 5 to maybe 6 years ago? Yeah. Easily. So I'm just glad we're here tonight to do this. Go ahead and read the resolution.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an LPA ODOT-led project agreement for the West Loveland Bike Trail signalization project.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Resolution 88 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So, again, we sometimes aren't always on top of the fees as much as we wish we could be. And one of the other ones that was actually brought up by our billing company is MedAccount, is our EMS fees that the city bills through a third party. Those are encompassed in Codified Code Section 111.09. and we were recommending a 10% across the board rate increase. The city bills for all fire and EMS runs, as do many communities. Those fees go into the EMS Fund 23. The way we do consignment billing, so if a city resident, he will not get billed or charged up and above what his health insurance will pay. So these are straight up 10% fee, 10% charges presented to City Council for 2 readings. 2 readings plus 30 days. They'll be in place sometime into December, going into first of the year.
Anybody have any questions or comments? This is a first reading only. Want to go ahead and read the ordinance?
Ordinance amending Loveland Code of Ordinances, Section 111.09, Fire and Emergency Medical Services Fees.
Thank you. Mr. Medler?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For you, we have 2 utility bill tax assessments for our people that were not able to make their payments. So we have Hamilton and Claremont, our standard quarterly items that we would like to approve by emergency.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Payne.
I have one question. Every quarter we have the same list of people. I'm beginning to recognize all their names. Is there something that should be done to assist these people in making their payments, or is there something that something different, or are we just kind of out of options because of the nature of the utility?
Some of the situations where unfortunately if a resident has passed away and their home is going through probate or something like that, and there's some issues with it getting paid, it's going to kind of keep going like that. So it's not always somebody not having an ability to pay.
It's just they choose not to pay.
Perhaps.
Anyone else? All right, go ahead and read the first ordinance.
Ordinance assessing liens for unpaid utility bills on property in Hamilton County owed to the city of Loveland and declaring an emergency.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Resolution 89, Ordinance 89 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Read the next ordinance.
Ordinance assessing liens for unpaid utility bills on property in Claremont County owed to the city of Loveland and declaring an emergency.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Ordinance 90 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Medler?
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this year, staff was requested to look at the council member pay. Pay was last adjusted via Ordinance 2009-63 with effective date of 2011 and increased every year until 2015. So after quite some time, we were looking at potential increases. There was really no gold standard of what to do. There are some places that have more than the city of Loveland pays, and there's some places that pay nothing. So, and everywhere in between. And sometimes it depends on what form of government. Obviously, you have a strong mayor government, you're going to have a mayor that's full-time, they get paid a lot more. Or if you have every council member that's part-time, such as we are, and if you have a manager, things are going to be a little bit different. So looking at it, as I said, there's really no gold standard to go off of. We looked at a $400 increase per roll per year from 2026 through 2031. Now, by law, we are not able to increase someone's pay while they're in their current term. So no one would be eligible until they go through the re-election process. So there won't be an increase until January of 2026, and at that point, only 4 members will be eligible to receive that increase. And then 2 years later, anyone that remains that would go through the election process would be eligible to get into the schedule that you have in the ordinance.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Medler, did this not go through the Finance Commission?
Yes, Commission discussed this, and they looked at some different strategies of what to do, and they thought, $400 was a good starting point, and then each year there'd be $100 increase per position.
Okay, so this is their recommendation as well then.
Yeah, the dollar amounts were approved by the commission.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Goodyear.
I didn't run for city council with the idea that I thought that there would be any substantial form of payment for doing this. I mean, I don't think anyone here is on city council with the idea that we're going to make money from doing this. I mean, it's a form of community service I think we all really appreciate and enjoy. And certainly I don't, have a huge concern about the fact that, how much it is or things of that nature. But I do think, having read the information and considered the amount, I mean, this is a very modest amount to raise salaries for council members, for mayor, for vice mayor. And it's also something that I appreciate the fact that the law says that if we approve this, we don't benefit from it. It's only if you're reelected do you benefit from it. So while I think, as was mentioned earlier by Mr. Blair, I mean, just the notion of raising council's pay can certainly cause consternation, possibly. I think that the amount that we're talking about, and the fact that it hasn't been raised since 2011 through 2015, I think is that correct? So, at this amount, knowing it's been that long since it's been raised, and frankly, it's not a very large amount to begin with, I think it's an appropriate thing to do.
Thank you. Any further comment, Mr. Bateman?
Yeah, I appreciate those remarks, Mr. Goodyear. Because looking at the history of this, it was 10 years ago, and this really won't go into full effect until close to 15 years, more or less, from the time this was last addressed. So the question I have is really, is this sort of tiered scale, this like phased approach meant to account for, let's just say inflation and set us up to where it caps out in the 2030s and it doesn't have to be looked at again until 2035 or 2040 or something like that. Just trying to understand, you mentioned that there's no one size fits all and there's no method for that. I'm just trying to understand a little bit along the area of like the permanence of this.
Sure. We didn't want to say $100 forever, because eventually as you get further out, in 100 years, $100 is going to be like a nickel. So
not.
Yeah, you're eventually going to have to, you would look at it again. So we figured, a number of years you'll have it there, so you don't really have to keep looking at it. But then after an amount of time, if the market or whatever, if council's opinions on what the compensation be changes, it'll give them an option to look at it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and it is slightly uncomfortable to be discussing this, and so I appreciate Mr. Blair's comments for having been through this. I think, to me, the only thing I'll add along those lines is, yes, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of preparation, but there's really not a lot of part-time headspace for me of being a council member. It's something walking around town, you're thinking about council all the time. And I think that that's something that's commiserate with, more than what I would consider, a part-time job or a pastime job. This is something that it does require a little bit of time, effort, more than a little bit of sacrifice. And so, to compensate that, I think is fair. So I appreciate this discussion, and I appreciate the rules in place to make it so that it's not some sort of instant gratification method we can use or future councils may use. So, again, uncomfortable to be discussing it, I guess, but I support this initiative.
Thank you. Any further comment, Mr. Payne?
Just a quick comment on the scale approach. I think it's a good idea to put a time limit on things and not do, like, for lack of a better term, a cost of living where it's X percentage every year or forever or whatever, because the role of council could change. We could find that in 10 years, the city government has been reorganized in a new charter committee, and the role of council is more minor, and we shouldn't be getting paid what we are now. We could also find that things happen that make sense to make more. So I think it's better to have this, as you said, uncomfortable topic forced upon council once in a while, to have serious conversations about it, rather than it being easy to just, well, it's in the books, and never talk about it. So I kind of like the idea of it being scheduled in a little bit, and I think that was a good decision by the finance committee. So,
Any further discussion? When this was first raised by staff, for the same reason, uncomfortable about it. But when I heard that the last time that an ordinance was passed was 2009, so we're going back 15 years. We won't be talking about this again until all of us are long gone from sitting up here, 2040, something like that, if we stay on the same. So seemed like a reasonable time to discuss it. I want to go ahead and read the ordinance.
Ordinance amending council member salaries beginning with the next elected council.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
So, council may recall a few years back when we annexed property on East Kemper just above the Walgreens. At that point in time, we did that to facilitate a community entertainment district. Typically, when the city does annexations, we get petitions. A property owner petitions submits a petition to annex into the city. For the second time in the decade I've been with the city, we're actually going to be requesting council to approve the annexation of city-owned property. When the city council earlier this year, back in July, completed the annexation of 47.72 acres down along Love Madeira Road, bounded by Lebanon, Love Madeira Road, and Twaitwee. One of the things that you did at that point in time was you now became contiguous to the Polk Run sewer treatment plant, of which the city is the property owner of the Polk Run sewer treatment plant. So with that, we will be requesting an annexation of 21.61 acres. So over the course of roughly 70 acres that we'll have annexed into the sewer, into the city limits. So with this, it's a simple motion. Just allows the city solicitor and I to submit the paperwork to the county to begin the annexation. We will come back to city council two more times, once for services to be provided and once more for the formal acceptance of the annexation if everything proceeds properly.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? All right. Vice Mayor?
I'll move to authorize the city manager and city solicitor to take the necessary actions to initiate the annexation of city-owned property housing the Polk Run wastewater treatment plant into the city's corporation boundaries.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
Last thing I have tonight, we will be presenting council with the 2025 2025 operating budget and capital improvement program for first reading at their November 26th meeting. As we typically do, an hour before that meeting, we do a capital improvement presentation. Largely be myself, Assistant City Manager Chris Weinich, and City Engineer Kelsey Richards. We want to go through some of the projects with council, sort of highlight some of the projects that we have on that plan. Actually, the theme of that night, Chris and I decided is we're going to sort of do the projects by plan, by which plan that they follow into. I'm not trying to say it, but I think council's goals and asking city staff to do the plans, 4 significant plans over the course of about 4 years, is pretty significant, and now we're trying to implement them. Large in part, you'll see that one of the big highlights of this is that 4 projects will be advancing those. So this is just simply requesting council set a special meeting for November 26th at 6 p.m. For 1 hour. That's an hour before for the CIP meeting. Is that the proper process, Misty? It's a special meeting. Okay.
Would someone care to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we establish November 26th at 6 p.m. For the 2025 capital improvement presentation meeting. Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Carries 7-0.
You might want to send a reminder on that Monday
I will update your calendar.
to some of our council members. Mr. Weinich.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As council has asked, we're going to give an update about every 2 months on our progress with PFAS. The last update was beginning of September. Since then, prior to that last one, we submitted what's called the general plan to Ohio EPA, which is basically the general outline of what we're planning to do. They got back with us with a bunch of comments. We sat down with them and had a couple meetings to go over their comments to try to get those addressed. Most of their comments, they revolved around regionalization and how we are approaching that and what factors we're looking at. They've got a specific criteria that they want you to look at, which essentially is 20-year net present worth. So they want you to look at, all right, your option A is building a plant. Option B is doing this, which is potentially go to GCWW, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks. Option 3, a mixture of Claremont County, GCWW. So we're currently working with our consultant on pulling all those numbers together so that the comparison is obvious to Ohio EPA. This is critical. This general plan is critical because without the approved general plan from Ohio EPA, we no longer can get any grant or loan monies for design or construction of the PFAS plant. The study, you didn't have to have that plan. So we got that funded for $46,500. In fact, they claim the check's in the mail. I'm still waiting on that. It should be coming here soon. But those two, the design and the construction, which are the big ticket items, those have to have a general plan approved. So we are working very hard on that and working with our consultant. And with that said, since that time that we met with them, we received updated proposals and essentially proposals from Greater Cincinnati Water and Claremont County on how they could serve us with wholesale water. So we're pulling all that together, putting that into a package to show to Ohio EPA on what those numbers look like. There will be a point where we do have this contract outstanding, or the potential contract outstanding with AECOM for design. We're working through negotiating with them on their fee. Their fee came in a little higher than anticipated, so we're working back and forth before we bring that to council to talk about those contract negotiations. So we're not ready to bring it to you yet. I think there's still some work staff level before we feel comfortable bringing it to you. So we're working through that. Also, in the month of October, here in council chambers, we hosted a PFAS, as I call it, a PFAS roundtable with all of our other Southwest Ohio communities. We invited all of them. Unfortunately, we got the ones that matter the most, quite frankly, is Milford, Indian Hill, Warren County. The other ones that we invited were Western Water and Kings Island, because they are a public water system also. So we had a really good, probably hour and a half conversation with the other communities on what they're doing and what they're seeing, what hurdles they're going through. We kind of got a feel for where we are in respect to other communities. So it was good. We're trying to do those every 2 months to kind of help each other out through this funding process, because it's a difficult process to get this money released. So we're working through that and using other input from other communities. I talked about AECOM. We got that fee and scope proposal. In addition, just to get the ball rolling, we did submit, even though I said I need an approved general plan, we did submit our application for a grant/loan from Water Supply revolving loan account, which is through Ohio EPA, which is funded through DEFA. We submitted that application for design. We put in a submittal for $2 million. So that has been submitted. Essentially, that's going to be held in the queue until we get a general plan approved, and then we'll see how that shakes out. One of the other things we committed to was making sure we're taking more regular samples than just the yearly samples of our raw water and our finished water. Unfortunately, it's taken some time. I'm a little surprised. Greater Cincinnati Water is not approved yet to do PFAS sampling. They're working to get approval. So we still pretty much have to use Eurofins as our testing facility. We're waiting on those. Before I came in today, I texted Ricky Gregory to see if our superintendent to see if those results had come in. Those results are not in. As soon as those are in, we'll get those out there just so we can all kind of see what the numbers are still looking like. I anticipate no changes, but it'll be good to just monitor those numbers and make sure we're still on track for what we think we need to treat for. Other than that, there's a lot behind the scenes working through this funding, trying to figure out, how we can get this to move forward with the funding. So we're working behind the scenes, still working with legislators on all this. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, not just here, but also at the state and federal levels with all this. There are rumors there might be some more money coming here soon. So we're trying to keep moving forward. But we know, that the money's the issue. So that's kind of where we're at. I'll have another report here in a couple months, but if anyone has any questions, I'll certainly entertain them.
All right. Thank you. Yes.
So just so I understand, you're talking about working with Ohio EPA to get an improved general plan. And when you say that they're looking at, I guess, Claremont County, Greater Cincinnati, Waterworks as suppliers, and then us doing it ourselves, which is what we do right now, obviously, building our own plant. Is it possible that the Ohio EPA says, we don't think your plan's feasible, we're not going to approve it, you have to go through Greater Cincinnati Waterworks?
That's possible. I don't have the finished numbers, but looking at the 20-year net present worth of building a plant and buying water from these other entities based on their rates that they provided us, I feel very confident in the decision we're going to present, which is staying our own public water system. However, they can say they do have the ability to say, no, we really think you should regionalize. What that does is not make us eligible for this funding through WSRLA. There will be potentially other funding mechanisms, but that is a possibility for them to say, no, we think you need to regionalize. Now, I will say I've had very good conversations with the governor's office about City of Loveland's reputation as a public water system. We have very, very few notice of violations. We're consistently keeping them updated on, for example, Claremont County, when we had the large main break, we got with them and talked to Ohio EPA about us doing the upgrades on that interconnect and the steps forward. We implemented a standard operating procedure. So we have a very good reputation thanks to some great employees here, specifically Ricky Gregory. So I think it's known. I think the idea of regionalization is really for the communities that truly cannot do this, truly cannot not do PFAS, but not provide consistently safe, reliable water. And there's a lot of communities, even around us, that is a challenge for them. City of Loveland is not that, and the state regulators recognize that. So I think as long as we cross our T's and dot our I's on what they want, if it's available, I think we're going to be okay. As far as, I'm not saying it's going to solve all our money problems, but I do think they will work with us on continuing to be a public water system. But Mr. Goodyear, you're absolutely right. They can simply say no. There may be a change of heart at the state level, and they want everyone, as many systems as possible, to regionalize.
And so that's, obviously, as soon as you said that, it caught my attention. I know probably for a lot of citizens, because I think most people, I know I feel this way, most people in Loveland would prefer to have our own water system. Everybody has the experience with having our sewer system regionalized, and I think it at all costs, if possible, to maintain that. And it's just a little bit, I know you'll do a great job. I know that I certainly trust what you're saying, but I think it's a great concern to think that EPA can come in and say, no, we're not going to let you do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll present, as soon as I feel comfortable that we've buttoned everything up, everything will get presented, in a very simplistic form of literally there are three options: option A, option B, option C, in a very simplistic form for everyone to digest. And don't get me wrong, we had a great conversation with Greater Cincinnati. They're a top notch water provider. They're good at what they do. They're certainly good at what they do. So every community needs to make the decision that makes the most sense for them.
Mr. Ori.
Mr. Weinich, you mentioned Claremont County and GCWW. Do they have PFAS filters in them now? Or do they not have the?
So Greater Cincinnati Water they have two sources of water. They're considered one public water system, which is key. They're considered one public water system. They get 90% of their water from the Ohio River, which is treated with granular activated carbon, and it removes PFAS. The other 10% comes from aquifers along the Great Miami River, and they currently do not treat for PFAS, and they do have detection above 4 parts per trillion in that. With the reason I said they're one public water system, they are in the same boat as everyone else. By 2029, they have to prove that their single public water system has less than 4 parts per trillion in their water. So they have some improvements they need to make out at their one plant.
How about Claremont County?
Claremont County, I'm going to tread lightly on this one. Claremont County they have not presented any data that shows that they have any PFAS in their water. However, they have several water sources also. They have a reservoir, and then they have groundwater. The water that we would be receiving from them is the groundwater from the same aquifer, very, very similar aquifer that we have. I don't know. All I can tell you is that they are not, to my knowledge, they are not above 4 parts per trillion. Claremont County also cannot provide us with 100% of our water. So that's why I said we've got an option A, B, and C. You're going to have option A, which is Loveland Stay Public Water System. Option A would be GCWW completely. And option C would be Claremont County and GCWW. So Claremont County does not have the capacity to serve our whole system at this time.
Thank
you. Mr. Bateman.
Well, let's just hope that they want to see municipalities help themselves and seek their own solution, because it sounds like what you were just describing, that our plan A is the best plan and the preferred plan. Just my only question, I think I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. If they approve this plan, and this plan is approved, then we have this funding application that may also get approved as a sequential order, which would be for the design of that system. So that plan would then start to become implemented if we were funded as such, right? I mean, it's a lot of ifs, and certainly a lot of dominoes have to fall in order to get to that point. But that's the course of action that we're hoping to pursue, is that our plan A gets approved, and then we can begin to design that system.
Correct. So the general plan is a very broad, very broad idea of what you're going to be doing. So you basically you tell them what type of technology you're going to use, kind of how you're going to be disposing of things, this and that. So it's very broad. It's essentially, we had that study done. It's essentially took that study, put it into a template that they want you to put it in, and then add in the cost benefit analysis of regionalization. So that's your general plan.
Okay.
Mr. Hart?
Again, I applaud you for taking the approach of pulling in other suppliers in the area and having those conversations and hosting the roundtable here, taking a leadership position. That's very commendable. When you had that discussion, were there any ahas that other people were doing something different, or that you guys were in the same place? Do you feel like what if anything that would make sense in this conversation came out of your roundtable?
One thing that did come out that I was unaware of, because it was not the previous round of this funding. So what I've heard, and I still don't see it in complete writing, I don't see it exactly in the application and everything, but what I'm hearing now is, because there's so little amount of money and so many people that need it, that they're capping the construction grant money at $4 million. So that, for me, that was like that, that stunk to hear that. So that's where everyone's trying to, where's all the, is there more money coming down the road? What's going to be happening here? So there's still some unanswered things. But as far as aha moments, as far as anything that we should be doing differently or approaching in a different light, no. But I will say, I will not, not that any position right now with dealing with this is a good position, but some communities, they're relying on this deadline being pushed. So I do think we're continuing to stay where we need to be as far as where we're at in this process. We're getting closer and closer to a break point where there will be some financial decisions that'll have to be made. Whether it's loans, whether it's hoping for grants. And if you're hoping for grants, that's where you have to kind of not necessarily pause, but there's a waiting game with grants, as Mr. Kennedy knows, with a lot of grants. There's a little bit of a waiting game. So we're getting close to that point of, making some substantial decisions, I think.
I think it's makes a ton of sense to continue to build strength in numbers, so to speak, on this.
Right.
Is there any discussions about, this is statewide national problem, right? So is there any talk about other agencies around growing your roundtable and continuing to be a leader, not maybe moving that out a little bit?
Yeah. So as part of I'm not on the same, but the Sanitary Engineers Association of Ohio, which, yes, it's sanitary, but a lot of them have water systems also. They're looking to create a conglomerate and kind of pull something together formally that, but their angle right now is not necessarily find us more money. Their angle I'm going to be honest with you, their angle is questioning the time frame and the limits. So at this point, I don't know that we're that interested. I mean, we're interested. We're going to be having discussions with them, but my focus, what I want to push is we need more money, not let's push this down the road. That's what a lot of the argument is right now in the community, in the water community, is let's push the deadline back. This is crazy, and this limit is crazy. That's what more of the pushback is on right now, where I'd like to see more of the pushback on forget all that. We need more money. We need more money. We need the federal government to help us out on this. So, yeah. But I will continue to keep my ear to the ground on all that and make sure we're not missing any opportunities as a community to continue building that strength in numbers as you referenced.
Well, I just speak for myself. I agree with your position. I applaud your approach.
Thanks.
Vice Mayor?
You had mentioned the latest round of testing of our water for PFAS, and you said you'd get those numbers out. Is that we'll find it on the tab in the?
Yeah, as soon as I get them, we'll put them up there. Yeah, as soon as I get them, we'll get. Like I said, I'm kind of surprised we don't have them yet. Like I said, I don't know what the delay is. I don't know if I'm not sure why we haven't got the numbers back. We did send them in at least 2 weeks ago, so we're still waiting on results.
Anything else?
And they're not they're not cheap tests either. So,
All right. Well, I appreciate these briefings that you give us. You're obviously on this as much as anybody can be, and I feel very, very lucky to have you on this particular task. So thank you. All right. Does anybody have any reports or comments? Yes. Ben.
I just have one comment, kind of going backwards to the amphitheater for a moment, and specifically to the cost of the amphitheater and funding for that. Just to make a suggestion to plant a seed for thought. It's been a long tradition in our country to name stadiums after people and put names on it and so forth. One of the first ones I think was Wrigley Field, and everybody kind of forgets because of its storied past that Mr. Wrigley was the guy who owned a chewing gum company and a baseball team, and so that's why his name is on the place. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I was thinking about funding for the amphitheater and how we could engage more of the community, and just say, like I say, something as food for thought as we move forward with that project is something along the lines of seeking community involvement in the form of donations from the community, with the idea of the name of the amphitheater being something like Loveland Memorial Amphitheater or something to that effect. I've seen other communities do, not with amphitheaters, but like when I was at my nephew's graduation, I saw the hall we were in, they had a board with names on it. And, they had a corporate side, they had a personal side. Loveland has always been a place that's very community oriented. We had, not to insult you, Mr. Kennedy, but I really enjoyed tonight's packet because it had a lot of history in it, and I could read that, and it was more exciting than like salt piles or something.
Easy on the salt.
So when we see that kind of thing, I mean, this community has a lot of history. It has a lot of involvement, and I could see something where people could make donations of friends and family that have been involved in the community to have their name included. It could be their own family, their own names. But, when we're talking about the kind of money we're talking about, I think that it's conceivable that we could see the community raise a lot of the money that would be necessary to make up the difference. And it kind of gets us away from looking for one big corporate sponsor or a couple of corporate sponsors. It just, like I say, it was something that struck me as that would be kind of a nice way to have more community involvement in a way where the community can show their support for this. Beyond it being just something that we get grants for and so forth. So, like I said, I just wanted to bring it up as a food for thought kind of thing. A lot of people don't realize that we can't get together and talk about these things outside of meetings. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to float that and give you guys some time to think about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Mr. Ping.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Goodyear.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
How does the